Hi, I'm Leanne Ely. I'm a nutritionist, a New York Times best-selling author, and some people even say I'm a life coach. I started the Daily Dish Show to share my story, my truth, and my journey to vibrancy, and to inspire others to do the same. Because it's all about grit, perseverance, and finding a way despite the odds. It's about embracing the whole woman, not just the parts that are easy to love, and feeding her heart, mind, body, and soul. But I found that this isn't just my story, it's your story too. It's go time. This is the Daily Dish.
Well, hello, it's Tuesday. You know what that means? We're here live, and I'm so glad that you are here with me. Patsy, especially glad to see you. Haven't seen you in a long, long time. I'm delighted to see you. Jocelyn, you too. Helen, hello. Good to have you all here. This week is basically setting ourselves up and getting ready for everything that's going on. And there's our girl, Tanya. Helen, nice to have you here as well. And here's the thing that we need to look at. We are sprinting this week as a group. How y'all doing? Hey, Jackie, I'm glad to see you. Alice. Now, we sprint as a group because there is this intangible energy about doing things together. You know, when like-minded women get together, isn't it just intensely wonderful? Have you noticed that? Can you feel the vibe, the high energy? It's crazy. That's why we are sprinting together. So make sure that as you are sprinting, you're encouraging your fellow sprinter. It's not all about you. It's about everyone. And we get to do this together. So be there to encourage, be there to offer support. Even if you're not doing it, just show up and say, guess what? I'm thinking about you. I'm here for you. You're doing this. Good for you. For some people, it's a brand new experience. For other people, no, it's not. We had like 50 downloads of our Hot Melt Sprint recently. So that just tells me that there's people who are in the background doing this program. They need you. Step up and tell them you're there, you're valuable, you're seen, I care about you. How can I help? There's nothing like that on the planet. There isn't. Because when you hear somebody who says, hey, I'm all about you, I'm thinking about you, I want you to make sure you know I've got your back, that's when you know maybe it's okay to come out of the shadows and to say something like, I'm really having a hard time here. Or, man, this low carb flu, I didn't even know, right? You've been there. So go be a friend, be a support, be an encourager. There's nothing more precious, more valuable. And I promise you, you're going to get a lot out of it in return too. Isn't it funny how those things work? Martha's in the house, y'all. Martha! I'm glad you're here. All right, so this week, and by the way, this week we are talking about our new upcoming class. It's called Recreate Your Life. We have a journal. It is juicy and delicious and wonderful and beautiful. Everything about it is incredible. This is what I like about this. And if you've seen some of our emails, then you've seen what I've said about this. But this journal is going to hold you up as you do the class. The class is a hybrid of sorts of journaling, of book club, of the whole 9 yards. And we get together 3 times, 3 juicy, fun-filled, action-packed, amazing, sometimes intense times. There's hot seats involved. There's book discussions, the whole bit. And you get to, as you're using this journal, you'll have book notes in here. You'll have aha moments, and it all comes together. That's the whole idea. Why do we read in the first place? We read to glean concepts to apply to our lives. And when we're writing about them, when we're thinking about them, and when we have things that we can discussion questions and what have you, it starts to stick. That stickiness is what makes it work. That's everything that I know. You get, when you get Recreate Your Life, you'll get this journal. And by the way, they're all shipping on Friday. And I'm going to say one thing. right now. And hear me right now. This is put the big red lights, flashing lights around this. Very few seats left. We sold a ton of seats. We only have ordered so many journals, and when they're gone, they're gone. So if this is something that you've been thinking about, then you need to get on top of it. Yes, Amy, we still do have, no, we don't have the Wise Women's supplements anymore, but we do have some other ones, and you can find them all at savingdinner.com. So, Patsy, I know you're already signed up. There's people, though, right now, this is what I know. There's somebody sitting here right now listening to this program and saying, "Oh, I don't know if I should sign up. I don't know. I might not want to do this, and I might not want to do that." All right, my arms are crossed across my chest, and I'm going to look at you and I'm going to say, "Sister, come on. It's time. This is your year if you declare it to be so." Okay? And this is a tool to help you get there. These are the books that we're going to be using, and I am telling you, I'm so turned on about them. One is Forever Strong, and this is a new science on aging well and the muscle-centric medicine. It's fascinating. Wait till you read it. It's all backed with, I mean, there's nothing just like, hey, I just pulled this out of the air. Not at all. Not at all. There is all kinds of good stuff here. I am ecstatic about this book. So we're going to learn about this because this is your body. Hi, Doris. We're also going to be talking about the habits of a happy brain, because when you learn to manipulate the chemicals in your body and your brain, you become the control master of your entire life. This is a huge deal. And this little book is absolute gold for helping you master that. And then lastly, we talk about mindset, because guess what? Just the title of this book gave me chills. The Mountain is You by Brianna Wiest. Now, let me tell you, it's about transforming self-sabotage into self-mastery. We need this because our mindsets are usually the mountain, right? So we start with Forever Strong, we go to Habits of a Healthy Brain, and then we move to The Mountain is You. We're going to be discussing it in 3 big, juicy sessions. Like I said, I'm telling you so much information, but I want to impress upon you how incredible this is going to be. I also do hot seats. That's when somebody says, hey, I'm stuck, I need your help. And I laser coach you along the way. Incredible. This is how we move the needle in our lives. We get out of our comfort zone and into a place where we feel a little bit uncomfortable. And that discomfort will lead us to this path of transformation. That's what it's all about. So recreate your life. You can find it at savingdinner.com/recreate. You will be getting this. You will need to order these. Easy. You can put it on your Kindle or whatever. You order those 3 books. The order is Forever Strong. Then we'll do the Habits of a Healthy Brain, and then The Mountain is You. It's going to blow your mind. These are these books have given me moments, and I can't wait to see how this all goes out. So again, we have very few seats left, less than 10. And if you don't grab it, it's going to be too late soon. So watch your email. We have an email coming for you tonight. Grab your seat with that link. Otherwise, you probably already have it. Or you can go to savingdinner.com/recreate. All one word. Okay? That's what I have for you. If you didn't see the sprint webinar, by the way, you can go to savingdinner.com/sprint webinar, all one word, and watch that sprint webinar and get yourself into the sprint. Don't be a perfectionist and say, well, I didn't start on Monday, so I can't start. Baloney. You can start right now. Starting now is better than starting at not at all, or waiting till next month and then having how many weeks of inflammation and all that. You don't need to do that. Forget about it. Hello, Deborah. I saw somebody else come in too. Doris, hi. And we got Betsy cheering in the background saying, do it. Yes, do it. Yes, those meetings will be recorded to recreate. if you have conflict on one of those dates. Oh, and check the dates. We had several people say this is a couple of nights of Passover. So we changed our April 23rd date, I think, to April 30th. So way out of Passover and into a place. So we'll have one will be, everything's 4 weeks apart, but this one will be 5 weeks apart. That's fine, right? We're flexible like that, right? We accommodate one another. So that's what we're doing right there. Lisa, I sure hope you come. I think it'd be so awesome for you. And nice to see you, by the way. So there you go. savingdata.com/recreate for the journal and the class and the blah, 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 blah. The sprint webinar and then sprint kits, /sprint kits. We still have deals on them. You're not going to get the free shipping and all the rest of it, but there's still a good deal. And the last thing is our moving sale is still going on. Moving sale, still going on. You can find it at savingdata.com/moving or move rather. And you can get some screaming deals on some supplements that are going bye-bye. Okay. So yeah, and just by the way, anybody who's saying this, we do it on Crowdcast. We'll do a book discussion, and you can come on screen or not if you don't want to. There's chat available, and we talk about the sessions and all of that, and everything is recorded. So if you need to, you can go back and, take a timestamp and watch again for things. So it's pretty cool. We love this. And, just so you know, I recently, this is what you do when you are, own your own company. You go through and you check your company's expenses. One of our biggest expenses, Crowdcast. One of the things that I said, no, keeping that. You know why? Because it is such a valuable tool. It gives us an opportunity to communicate and be together as a community. And it also gives us a chance to say, hey, if you didn't see it, you can go back and watch it. It gives us an opportunity. If you wrote down that timestamp, you can go back to exactly where you want to go and re-listen to something that just nudged you a little bit. So that's why we have that. And I just really believe it's a great idea. This week's quote somehow came out of my mouth, and that is decide, declare, and decree. And I think there was if I didn't, maybe I should do another one, a show on that, because what this means is when you decide on something, then declare it. And then once you have declared it, then own it and decree it. If you are the queen of your own life, this is what we do, right? We take absolute ownership over our lives. We abdicate to nothing. This is your life. This is my life. So decide what you want. Declare this is what it is and decree it to be so. That's what this is about, okay? Put that quote in your journal and start mulling it over. Your brain will love it. That's brain candy right there. So today I've got a show for you. Lord have mercy. It's a show. It's a show that needs to be talked about. It's a show that's going to rattle your cage. Hey, Trish, good to see you. Of course she's the queen of her own life. Of course you are. So today what I want to talk about, for those of you who have abdicated the queenhood of your own life to guilt and shame, this show is for you. And we're going to unpack some juicy principles. And we're also going to, I'm hoping, unlock those chains that have held you back. If you've ever been held back by guilt and shame, this show is so much for you. So buckle up and let's go, because I really, really want to talk about this stuff. There's a lot of juicy information here. And don't forget, you can always get our newsletter. Our newsletters are delivered the next day with the show notes. So tomorrow's show notes, juicy. You're going to want them. Autumn, good to have you here. So guilt and shame, as we all know, are profound emotions. Each one of us on this planet has experienced it, and it's unpleasant as all get out. Am I right? But we know, too, that guilt and shame can deeply and significantly influence your behavior, your mental health, the psychology of how you operate as a human. It has a huge influence in our lives. And even though guilt and shame, where do they come from? well, some kind of a circumstance or some action, and where you perceive yourself as having failed or done wrong to your personal standards or even societal standards. I mean, it's that kind of a thing. And we need to understand one thing about guilt and shame. They can operate as a moral compass. However, the problem is that they don't, for the most part. It isn't just the moral compass part. We take it a step further, and we are deeply not just impacted by it, but we take it on as a part of who we are. Are you hearing me on this? There's a distinct difference, and that's why I've got a 2-word phrase that's going to set you free. Okay, but we're not there yet, so let's keep going. So, while most of us have experienced it, there are some people who it's so ingrained in them, they were basically raised on it. This is how your mother operated, or your parents, or your family. It was like this, or your school, or teachers, or whatever, your circle of friends. Guilt and shame, guilt and shame, guilt and shame, guilting somebody into doing something, shaming someone for having an opinion that's different than theirs or whatever. But this guilt and shame stuff can become somewhat of a toxic lifestyle for a lot of people. And they don't even recognize it because it's so a part of their lives. And while we can carry these heavy emotions with us, sometimes we have to just pull back and say, okay, so what is clouding my view of what life could possibly be? What's taking away that vibrancy? What is holding me back from my dreams? What is keeping me from being the queen of my own life? So let's talk about what is guilt. Well, first of all, guilt's the feeling of distress that comes from the awareness of having done something wrong or harmed somebody else, whether it was intentional or even accidental. You feel guilt for something. Have you ever, I hit a squirrel and killed a squirrel. This is probably about a year. I felt guilty about it. It was an accident, but I still felt guilty about it. Because of my car tires, there is now a squirrel in this world that is not living his best life. That's how I felt about it. This happened. Guilt is especially an action type of a thing. You feel guilty about something you did or you failed to do. It's either something that was done or something that wasn't done that should have been done. A phone call, or you could have called, you could have reached out, you could have written that note, you could have done something. However, shame cuts deeper, and it's so much more painful. And this is where it burrows in almost like a parasite and sucks the vibrancy right out of your life. Because what the difference between guilt and shame, it's not just about what you've done, right? But about who you are. What guilt does is transform into this shame and say, that's because you are not worthy. That's because you are inherently bad. That's because you are X, Y, and Z. And that's when shame just takes over and is not just a dark cloud hanging over our heads, but is this dark burden that's within. It involves a painful feeling of humiliation or distress, and it's caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior, leading to a sense of worthlessness and inadequacy. It's so heavy. And the other part of this is it's very intrinsically linked to vulnerability, because it leaves you exposed and raw and vulnerable and feeling deeply flawed. And that's when we start doing the comparison game of, well, she's not like that, but I am. She doesn't do this and this, that, and the other thing, but I do. And that's where it sinks even further in and burrows. Like I say, burrows. Think about, what does a mole do in your yard? Well, it's not above ground, it's below ground, and it's trashing your yard, digging through and through. And that's what happens in your life with this kind of heavy emotion. Brene Brown has studies on this. You know that. She's a psychologist, and she's done all these research studies massively on shame. But she has this to say, and I think it's really important. I'm just going to read it. I believe that there is a profound difference between shame and guilt. I believe that guilt is adaptive and helpful. It's holding something we've done or failed to do up against our values and feeling psychological discomfort. I define shame as the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging, something we've experienced, done, or failed to make us unworthy of connection. I don't believe shame is helpful or productive. In fact, I think shame is much more likely to be the source of destructive, hurtful behavior than the solution or cure. I think the fear of disconnection can make us feel dangerous, out of whack, not completely whole. So while guilt and shame can become a person's way of living, they can lead to chronic emotional distress. We know this. And I think Brene's, what she's saying is true, but the problem is that often what happens is that guilt becomes the seed to shame. And guilt gets buried instead of processed. And that's the whole difference. When we can process something and we can take that and do that analytical work that needs to be done with it, it requires noticing. It requires a whole different perspective rather than just taking it on and saying, okay, go ahead and plant that seed. We become selective and aren't going to allow that seed to be planted in our garden necessarily. So we have to look at this because guilt can become pathological. And when it's excessive, it leads to unrelenting self-punishment. Anybody ever experienced this? Raise your hands, pinkies up. I've done this. And that doesn't proportionately work with the mistake or the grievance or the circumstance that has happened. Have you noticed that? We blow it out of proportion and make it that much more. And that's why I say it's a seed for shame. And while shame is much more pervasive, right? It can result in a more enduring sense of self-loathing and unworthiness. And what do you think that lends itself to? All kinds of mental instability like depression and anxiety and low self-esteem, even health issues. It is super impactful. I always say, back in the 90s when my thyroid just went crazy, that was a tell. It was the guilt and the shame in my life. It was the stuff, and I could feel it encasing my body. I could feel its seed germinating inside, and boom, there went my thyroid. This is what happens when this stuff goes unchecked. And this is why I say notice and learn and find and analyze and look at. Don't pretend it's not there. This idea that we pretend and just keep putting on that happy face that we were told to put on when we were kids doesn't work. It actually destroys us from the inside out. So while I love Brene's perspective, I love her research, I love her books, I love better this idea of wise remorse. Now write that down, wise remorse, because this is the concept that we've been talking about. I've been talking about endlessly by saying, be analytical, process this, take a look at what it is, pull back, take out the emotional plug from it and just see what's going on here. That's what wise remorse is. It's a constructive path. It's a constructive shift away from the guilt and definitely away from the shame. Are you digging this so far? This just really spoke to me because, we all have to process so many things, and a lot of stuff percolates and comes up when you're doing work on yourself. And here it is again, dealing with, okay, here's some guilt, here's some shame, and here's all of that. So wise remorse represents a healthier, more constructive approach to acknowledging and learning from your own mistakes. Because guess what? I have a news, flash alert here. Breaking news. You are a human being and you will perpetually make mistakes in this human experience of yours. You just will. So will I. But we have an opportunity to learn. We have an opportunity to lean into this idea that wise remorse will show us a different path. And that's what I want to look at, because this can be a catalyst to positive change. Instead of being buried in this garbage, we can rejoice and say, wait a minute, there's another way. I don't ever want to see anybody fall into this trap of self-loathing. Oftentimes, like when I do hot seats and stuff, I will get back these hot seat, we call them hot seat applications for whatever. Lots of different questions in there. And I can see the shame on some of them. I can feel what's being laid out there. And it's our self-talk that reflects what it is that's going on inside. And when we allow that to take root, it takes root. And it is like a parasite. It's sort of like, what is that stuff that climbs up trees and eats them up? Mistletoe. It's a parasite on a tree. We love it at Christmas time, but we don't want it on our trees. It will suck the life out of them. So if we can go through this reflective process that includes understanding the impact of what just went down for your actions, feeling genuine regret. It's not dismissing it. It's not feeling it. It is feeling it, processing it, and then taking responsibility and not falling into the pit of self-loathing. Self-loathing will destroy your life. We all know that. So there's science, too, behind this idea of wise remorse. And I'm going to give you a couple of studies because I think it's fascinating. And when we use wise remorse like this, then we're going to find ourselves in a place of being able to move past guilt and shame and self-loathing and all this other kind of stuff and move into this place of being solution-oriented. And there's never a better perspective, in my opinion, than being in that place of saying, you know what? This is what happened, but this is what I can do. There's power there. Hey, Anne, Susan, good to see you. So there was research done by a woman named Kristen Neff, and there were others too. Treating yourself with kindness and understanding in the face of mistakes and failures can lead to greater emotional resilience, lower levels of anxiety and depression, and a more optimistic outlook on life. That is wise remorse, because it's given you new eyes to see. Ever hear that one before? Also, in this concept of post-traumatic growth, because let's face it, shame is traumatic. But if you can look at that with wise remorse, you can go past that into post-traumatic growth. And this is, by the way, this is coined by a guy named Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun. And they say you can experience significant personal growth following adversity with this type of approach. Studies have been done on this. That, to me, that, locks it in and it makes it, okay, yeah, there's studies. They're showing that this works. So let's go there. So if we're going to go from guilt and shame and go to this place of wise remorse, what is the path? Well, I've got 5 things for you. And guess what? It's not going to cost you a dime. Not going to cost you a dime. Okay, you ready? Number 1, mindfulness and acknowledgement. This is recognizing when you've done something, and instead of trying to excuse it, instead of trying to run away for it, you experience, yes, maybe that little bit of guilt, but you allow that again to be the moral compass and not the destination point, right? Just the moral compass. Okay. Take heed, Leanne. Something's here. I got to acknowledge this. I got to own this. Personal responsibility is the thing that happens when you do this kind of mindfulness and acknowledgement. And guess what? When you do that, you kind of let yourself a little bit off the hook, because now there's nowhere to turn. There's nowhere to scatter your energy among all the people that are there. You take responsibility for it and it becomes yours. And then you say, okay, so what's next? And that's what I think is great, because it pulls back the judgment and pulls forward instead the solution. You see that? And number 2 is self-compassion, because, if you treat yourself with the same tenderness and kindness and love and understanding you would offering a friend who's been in the same kind of a situation, it'd feel a whole lot different, wouldn't it? Why don't we do that with ourselves? I will answer that for you, because we're not trained to do that. We have to come to this place in our lives of where we are today and say, it is time to start doing this. Because when we do this and offer ourselves self-compassion, it not only does it soften the blow, but it allows us to further move into wise remorse and get a really good solution to it. 3, of course, is taking responsibility. When we do that without allowing them to define our worth or as a person, then what we're doing again is we keep pointing that moral compass toward responsibility and solution. And that offers something way different than remorse does, than guilt does, and shame, doesn't it? And then we also look at this number 4 as this is an opportunity to learn and to grow. One of the things that I've said before, and again, don't use my example as yours, but I have said before, I'm just the poster child for fill in the blank, like, how to have a relationship with a man. I said that for a long time, and guess what? Fulfilling prophecy. I would have one bad relationship after the other because I would choose wrong. That's what I told my brain. This is what you do. You don't need to do that. Nobody needs to do that. What we need to do is we need to identify what the lessons are. Okay, you are not the poster child, but you can, instead of being the poster child, you can be the woman who says, these are the lessons that I learned from this mistake. I'm not going there again. I am not going there. I'm going to listen to my intuition. I am going to look for the solution to the problem instead of just closing my eyes and saying it's all going to be okay and being so dismissive. You know what I'm saying, right? This is what we do. Instead of doing the old things, we do the new things. That's what we do. We learn and we grow from, instead of allowing it to take over and to further the burn. And then the last one, of course, is when it's possible, we make amends. Have you hurt somebody? Have you done something or said something or whatever? Is there a way to make this up? And even if there's no way to make it up, acknowledging, taking responsibility, and going to that person and, humbling yourself, apologizing, and meaning it is another way to clean the slate and to do the very best that you can. And I will say this because I have experienced it. Just because you do that does not mean the other person is going to be receptive. It doesn't fix everything, but it does fix what's inside of you. And that's the only thing that you have control over. So my thoughts are, if we adopt wise remorse, instead of going immediately into the over and over and over and over again thing of reliving this guilt, allowing it to fester and become infected in shame, and then lodging itself into our lives and ruining the vibrancy that we're striving to live in, the fully bloomed experience that we could have. If we go with wise remorse, understanding as human beings, we're going to blow it, right? What can I do? How can I fix? How can I go forward? What is it that's on my plate that will allow me to do something better. This is how we open the door to growth and to being the women that we're called to be. Because nobody is called to live a small, tiny little life under a rock in guilt and in shame. What we're called to do is to live vibrantly, to live in our mission, and to understand that we're here on purpose and for purpose. And if that's the case, there's no room for guilt and shame. So toss it off. It's time to shift and understand that wise remorse, that can be our true north to becoming the very best versions of ourselves. And that's what I have for you today. Ta-da! Oh my goodness. All right. So thank you. It was a long show, but I hope you found it worthwhile and helpful. And I certainly hope that I am going to see you in class when we recreate your life. It is coming up. Very few seats left. Go to savingdinner.com/recreate. Okay? Peace be with you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining me today. You can find me on TikTok for daily tips to help support your most vibrant life. And remember, you are the author of your own story. Until next time.